Hey everybody. Hey, I got my first How Would I Edit Your Image photo. It came from Johnny Williams. So thank you, Johnny, for giving me this opportunity, and I look forward to editing your photo and hopefully you like the final result. So we'll see at the end. So I've already put it on my desktop, so I'm going to hit import. Once you hit import, you just got to go and find it. It is on my desktop. Uh, so those will load, and it's the B image here. So I'm going to uncheck all. I'm going to check on just the B. And then I'm going to say import, of course, and at that point it'll open it up in the Lightroom. And there it is. I'm going to double click to make it full screen. So it looks like we got a beautiful, looks like a hornet, I would guess, or a bee of some kind. Um, so we're going to see what we can do with this image. First of all, let's look at see what it was taken. It's a 3.71 megapixel or megabyte JPEG image that was shot with an Olympus with a, looks like it's a 150 to 600 zoom, and it was shot at a focal length of 548. But the Olympus has a 2x factor with its sensor, so it's shot actually at 1098 millimeter. You can see it was shot at -3 EV, which underexposed just by a third of a stop, and it looks like it was 1/1000 of a second, f6.3 at 2500 ISO. So there's going to be a little bit of noise, I would imagine. So let's zoom in and look at the noise. Well, there's not quite a bit. There's not very much at all, really. So let's go ahead and go into the develop module. I'm going to hit the letter D, or you can hit the develop module. And at that point, what I'm going to do first is I want to go to the detail tab, and I want to see what denoise does to it. Well, in this case, you can't do denoise with the button because it is a JPEG. I forgot about that. So I'm going to zoom in again and look at it again. I'm going to say there's not very much noise here, so we're not going to worry about that. So we're just going to go straight into processing. So I'm going to go down to lens correction, click enable profile, and let's see if I can find it. This was an Olympus lens. It does not show up. Maybe because that's a JPEG, or maybe it's OP RPPO, I think maybe. I don't know. So I'm going to actually turn this off and not use it. I'm just going to go with regular develop. Okay, so here we are. Since this is a JPEG, again, I can't hit the adaptive color, which would be the first thing I'd try. So let's just try auto. Okay, auto did a little bit. I'll go Control Z to show you the before. That's the before. That's the after, so a little better. I would typically, if I didn't do Adobe Color or the adaptive color, I would typically go with landscape and then hit auto to see what that does for me. I really like landscape if the adaptive color doesn't work very well. So at this point, when I hit auto, it made some changes here. I'm going to take the blacks down just a little bit. Just a small amount. You can see where the blacks are starting to show up here in the blue. That's because I got this little button over here on. So I don't want very much black, but I do want it to be a little darker at the end just because these are totally black anyway. We can do the same thing with the whites. Let's take that up a little bit. And again, if you go too far on the whites, you start getting the red, and we don't want the red. Don't want it super overpowering because I don't like this being too white. We're going to try to tone that down a little bit with the highlights. And the reason you guys don't see me moving these sliders, I actually have what's called I think it's called a loom cube, if I remember right. Nope, a loop desk. A loop deck. And it's actually got spinner controls that I use. So I'm going to take the highlights down just a little bit. Actually, take it down quite a bit. I'm going to take this saturation, or excuse me, the contrast up to, my magic number is 20, but I'm going to go a little higher on this one. I'm going to go to, heck, let's go to 40. I kind of like the way that done. Let's hit the backsplash button. That's before, after, before, after. I do like what that done to the image, the contrast. It really bumped it up quite a bit. We can take the shadows up a little bit to see what that does for us. Probably won't do it quite a bit. It done a little bit. And then our vibrance is at 12. I usually go a little higher than that, but let's push it up quite a bit. That's a little bit too much. So let's go to 35. Kind of like that. Again, let's do before and after. Before, after. I really like the way the colors look in the background. And then I do saturation. I said do. We'll take that up quite a bit and see what it does for us. Actually, it's not doing too bad, but I don't go too high on this one because then it really starts getting kind of punchy. So in this case, I'm going to maybe go to about a 5. If I got any banding in here. And it doesn't appear that I do, so that's good. So far that's pretty decent. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to jump over to the mask. I'm going to create a mask. And in this case, typically I do subject, but I really like the object. So I'll click object, and then I want to have the square. So I'm going to click on this right here instead of this one right here is free, which means I can actually draw what I want to select. I don't like that one. It said no object was detected, no fake, because I didn't have an object in there. So I'm going to go back and change this to the square. And in this case, I'm going to try to do all of the bee and its reflection, and we'll see what it picks up here. It wasn't bad. In this case, I'm going to keep that, but I'm going to do subtract brush. And you can see my brush size here is not too big. I'm going to take and get rid of some of this because I don't really want this to be affected that much. I'm not worried about the darker areas, but the lighter areas will probably throw off my image and make it look a little bad. So we're going to go there. I'm going to actually zoom in, and I'm going to make my brush a little smaller, actually quite a bit smaller, and I'm going to try to get rid of some of this in here, just so it doesn't show up as an anomaly. Make it even smaller, and try to get in here a little bit. Yeah, that's not too bad. We're going to leave it at that. So we're done there. So now we can actually make edits to just this part of the image. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's see what exposure does if we pump it up quite a bit. So let's slide that up. Well, that gives it quite a bit of a pop. Let's give it a little bit of whites. Bumps it up, but now I'm starting to get some really blown out areas in here. But again, it's not that big of a deal because it's not really going to be a major part of the image. I'm going to take the contrast up just a little bit more on the bee. And I might take the saturation up just a tad. That'll work. And maybe the shadows. Okay, I'm going to say that's good. We're going to close that down. Now we're going to go back to zooming out, and I want to look at my colors again. Looks pretty decent. We got detail. I would take this as a JPEG image, so it's already kind of processed with all these things I just did based on the computer or the camera model and the software that's inside of it. But sharpening's done in camera too, but I'm going to bump it up to about 110. Okay, that looks really, really nice. I'm going to take my radius. Again, I told you guys always use 1.3. And then I'm going to take and hold down the command, actually the Alt key for Mac, and I'm going to press down on my left mouse key, and I'm going to slide this to the right. Now, anything in the white will be sharpened. Anything that's not white that is black will not be sharpened. So that actually made this pop a little bit more. Zoom back out. We got a little bit of pop in here too. You can tell that. Now, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to crop this. So you can come up here and hit the crop button, or you can hit the R button, and it brings up your crop mode. You guys know I'm a super duper fan of the 16:9, so we're going to do that immediately. And already I can tell I like the crop much better than the format that comes out of a camera. And I'm going to come up here, and now I'm just going to look at my colors. If I come down here, I lose all that beautiful color at the top. So I'm going to actually take this up as high as I can without cutting off this wing here. That'll give me almost like a rule of thirds per se. It gives me a third here, gives me also a third here. And then you got this leading line that comes through, and it actually has a starting point at the bottom here. And if you look, it kind of works out pretty well that it's got a stopping point up here, which is kind of nice too. So it'll kind of give you a leading line from the left and from the right, and then you've got this highlight area that does the same thing. Actually, this whole, I'll call it probably a bird feeder or a bird bath. So we're going to double click on that, and we're going to set that in. Okay, so far it looks really, really good. Let's go full screen again. I'm hitting the letter F. That looks really, really good. I'm going to go back to my crop, and I'm going to crop this side in just a tad. Maybe like that. I might go down just a little bit, and I'm going to look at it again on full screen. Okay, I really like that. And that places, as you know, we got the rule of thirds. Well, I can go back and show you on the crop. You got the rule of thirds, so you got this third line, and then you really got kind of his face in here, which is kind of a sweet spot too. And actually, if I hit the letter O, it'll show us through these options, and this might give you the spiral one. Oh, it really kind of does. Somewhat, I guess you can say. It doesn't have all these leading lines, but you get the effect. So I'm going to put this back on the rule of thirds, which is the one I use. Well, if I can hit it. Gosh dang it. There we go. Oop, one more. Nope. There we go. Okay, we got it back to that. So I'm going to hit enter to set that in there. I really like this, but I don't like these bubbles. To me, they're kind of distracting. I know they were there, but again, this is your image. This is how I would edit your image. So I'm going to go ahead and go up here and hit the remove, which is this little tool right here. I'm going to go down here to remove. And now this time I typically don't do this. Usually I just go through here and hit spot and keep going. And this time I'm going to hit this visualize spots, and this will help us quite a bit too. I don't like seeing all of that, so I'm going to turn this down some. Now at this point you can tell these are the spots I'm trying to get rid of. So if I just come in here and make my brush a little smaller, and now all I'm doing is painting over these. And again, as much detail as you want to get, as much as you want to clone out, you can. I'm going to leave that little swirl at the bottom because I think that adds to it. So we're just going to go through here really, really quick. I'm doing them in different segments because I want to make sure it's sampling right beside where I'm taking these out of. Get rid of this, get rid of that, get rid of this, that. And again, this, how fast this goes will depend on your computer. I've got a really good computer because my wife loves me. And let's go ahead and turn off visualize spots. Actually, you can't do that now. I'm going to have to hit remove. So let's let the computer do its whirling thing. Again, it's going to depend on how fast your computer is and how long this takes to do. And we got rid of most of them. So let's do before and after again. That's before, and that's after. Now, doing that, I've actually seen where I've got a couple more spots. I'm going to click on that again, and I'm going to go to remove. And this time I'm going to turn off the visualize spots because I want to actually see what I want to do this time. And I want to get rid of, which ones were it now? Because they're not really detailed. There's one there, there's one there, couple here, couple here. And we're going to leave the rest. Everything else looks good. So I'm going to hit remove again. Let me get back on here. I don't know why I closed that image. But anyway, just done the spot removal. So now I do have one thing I want to do. I want to make this get a little bit more shiny. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to do a mask again. This time I want to do create new mask, and this time I want to do the landscape one because it should pick up the water for me. And it did. That's about all it picked up. So it picked up the water. I'm going to say okay. I'm going to create a new mask. At this point I'm going to do subtract because, as you noticed, I got some artifacts here. So I'm going to make my brush pretty big, and I'm going to get rid of all this because that is really not water, as you can tell. Same thing with that. I also want to get rid of it here and here, anywhere it's really not the true water itself. And we're going to get rid of a little bit over here and a little bit of this black here. Actually, I may put that back in there. So this time I'm holding down the Alt or the Option, and I'll put this back in here. Okay, so we're good there. I'm also going to put this in here because this is also the water. Well, it's not doing it, so let's hit the add button, brush. See if that does it for us. There we go. Okay, so let's take out this part though, since I just went over to B's head and I don't really want that to be shiny. Okay, we're going to say it's there. So what I'm going to do is I always like using clarity for this part of it and punch that up quite a bit. I'm going to take the blacks down a little bit. I'm going to bring the shadows up just a tad. Nope, don't like that. Take the contrast up some. And I actually like the way that looks now. I'm going to see what the saturation does for me. Well, that makes the gold stand out, which I'm really okay with. So let's go ahead and close that. And again, let's look and see what we got with full screen. Yeah, I'm really liking that. And at this point, I'm going to call this image done, but there is one last thing we need to do. We need to do the effects, and we need to do the post-crop vignette. And once we do that, I'm going to go to, usually start out about 9. I'm going to go up to 15, and then I'm going to do full screen, or before and after again. Before, after, I'm going to go down in this case to 9, and then I'm going to actually double click and take this off, just to look at it again. Here we go. Okay, take it back to 9 again. Let's do it one more time. 9, nothing. So I'm going to go back to 9. I like that. And at that point we were done. And at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to export it. I'm going to do Control Option E export, or you can go up to export, or you can click export. I'm going to put it in my Facebook account. I'm going to go down. The only thing I'm going to do this time that when I export is just get rid of the watermark because this is Johnny's image. And I'm going to say export. And at that point, I'm going to say we're done. I'm going to do one last thing. Oh, this image. So we got his original, the one I worked on. We're going to hit C for compare. And again, we're going to make, if I hit tab, I think it gets rid of my tabs. Yes, it does. So we got his original and my edit. And if you zoom in on it, you can kind of tell the difference. Mine, there is no zoom. This is actually 100% because I cropped it. And remember, this is a JPEG image. I don't know what the image, remember the image file size was only 2 megabytes or something. So the crop really did take some away, at least some of the size of it. Again, you could upscale it in another program. I think this looks a lot better. I could have toned down this white edge here a little bit, but I don't find it too distracting. But again, punch up the colors, punch up a little bit on the B, and give it the water a little bit of added boost. So again, that's it. I'm going to hit C to get rid of that, and I want to show you just the final image now. And there it is. We'll go full screen one last time. And there it is. Johnny, I hope you like that. And again, a good image to start with. And I really like the colors, like the subject, love the reflection. So a really good image for me to practice on. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed this. And if anybody else has got an image out there they want me to do, how would I edit your image? Please just email it to me. I'd prefer RAWs, but I'll take any image you got. Thank you. Goodbye.